Welcome to our weekly broadcast here at Emmaus of Kingsport. I'm directing your attention, as I'd said before, in the book of Judges, chapter number 8. And I would like to begin reading with verse number 33, if I could. And it came to pass, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel turned again and went whoring after Balaam, and made Baal Berith their god. And the children of Israel remembered not the Lord their God, who had delivered them out of the hands of all their enemies on every side. Verse number 35. Neither showed they kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, namely Gideon, according to all the goodness which he had showed unto Israel. I want to preach tonight, or this morning, if I could please, from Judges chapter number 8. And I want to deal with the subject of forgotten heroes. Gideon was called by the Lord while he was working in the thrashing floor of his daddy's wheat farm. It was there that God came to him in the night. They were hiding their wheat from the Midianites who had overtaken the properties and lands of Israel at that time. Gideon, his name means to cut down. And the Lord used him when he rose him up to be a man of valor to cut down and destroy the altar of Baal that Israel had started worshiping. And Israel came to kill Gideon. And Gideon's dad said to him, Joash said to them, if Baal be real, then let him kill Gideon for what he did. That's where the name Jerubbaal comes from. It means to contend or be discontent with Baal. So, of course, Baal never moved. Gideon never died, because there's only one true and living God that the Bible speaks about. So, the angel of the Lord came down and told Gideon that he was a man of valor. And Gideon had never even owned a pocket knife. But God raised him up to fight the enemy, to fight the Midianites, and to get them to flee. And he was going to do it in a way so that he could prove that he was the Lord and that he was going to give victory. Gideon got his big army together to go fight the Midianites, but God said, you've got too many. If you win the battle now, you're going to get the glory. And he dwindled Gideon's army down to only 300 men. Did you know 300 in Bible numerology is the number of victory? And God said, I'm going to give you the victory, but it's not going to be in the power of your own might. It's going to be by the sovereign hand of the God of this universe that's going to come down on your behalf, and you are going to be on the winning side. So with just 300 men, they surrounded the enemy while they slept, the Midianites. They lit torches all around them, and then in the middle of the night, they blew trumpets. Midianites were staggered, concerned, and scared. And they took their flight because they thought they were outnumbered, and they fled for their lives and left their camp and their tents and all of their belongings. And because of this little nobody named Gideon that God raised up to take over a whole nother nation of the Midianites with just 300 men, Gideon went home from battle, and he lived what the Bible said to a good old age. History tells us Gideon lived to be about 100 years old. And because of his acts of heroism and valor, Israel experienced 40 years of peace due to the heroic and dedicated moves of this man named Gideon. But the Bible tells us in verse number 35 that it wasn't long after his death that his courage, his fortitude, and the miracle God performed through him was soon forgotten by the people. It's sad in the day in which we live that even not only in our churches but in our country, how fast we forget heroes. Did you know heroes, in the most part, are only considered a hero as long as they are alive? Many of their accomplishments die with them. One reason why we forget our heroes is because while we're teaching history, we fail to mention them. Many times heroes are ignored because their expertise is not entertaining to everybody, or at least to others. I'm going to mention a couple of heroes that I'm sure you've never heard of before. And there's many more I could, but for sake of time, you understand. There was a young man named Alan Turing. He lived from 1912 to 1954. As a very young man, he became a mathematical genius. Many people thought he would never amount to anything because to the average American back then, he looked like a nerd. He was that quiet kid with the thick glasses that didn't have much to say. He was a thinker, but he pursued on in his mathematics. And right in the middle of World War II, they called this young man and asked him if he could start to crack Germany's Enigma code. It was the code that the Germans used to send from their strategic areas where the generals were out into the fields where the combat was, and was giving them orders on what move to make next. And this little nerdy boy named Alan Turing, as just a young man, being a mathematical genius, he cracked Germany's Enigma code. And he quickly brought World War II to an end at an early close, while the Germans were scratching their head, wondering how America was finding out every move they were making before they ever made it. And it was because of a little thick glass nerdy boy that people made fun of that God raised up and gave him the intelligence to give us victory in one of the major wars of our time. I think of Fred Harvey. You all will love him. He was born in 1835 and he died in 1901. He pioneered the first chain of restaurants in North America. His outline of expanded eatery still influences restaurant chains today. So believe it or not, what we are developing and evolving into in restaurant chains, availability, and drive-through was really created by a man that died in 1901. Jack Phillips was a guy that caught my attention because of his age. Jack was only 25 years old, and he was the senior wireless operator aboard the Titanic. It was him on April 4th, 1912, that the Titanic ran into an iceberg and began to sink. Through his relentless effort to send out stress calls for help and secure people into lifeboats, to this day, he is credited for saving 705 passenger and crew members, while Phillips himself perished in the North Atlantic icy waters as he chose to go down with the ship. There's a lot of heroes in our country that we overlook and we forget about, and there's no way within a 30-minute segment that I could bring all of them to your attention. But there are three in specific that I think in the day we're living in need the recognition that they're about to get from our pulpit. Number one, I want to talk about the heroes that has captivated our freedom. I was reading the other day and tears were running down my face as I read the story of Corporal Kyle Carpenter. He received the Medal of Honor June 19, 2014. He was on top of a building over in the Middle East during the Iraq War. Him and his comrades had surrounded the flat roof building and was trying to hold off a band of insurgents that had moved in. While they were on the flat roof, just being a young man, somebody from the insurgents threw a live hand grenade on top of the flat roof. Not wanting him and all of his comrades to perish over one hand grenade, Kyle Carpenter jumped on it himself. Like never before, the hand grenade, instead of blowing upward, blew downward, which means it blew completely through the roof of the building. His face is now scarred. His jaw is disfigured as it was broken and had to be replaced and fixed. Not only did it break his jaw, but he endured shrapnel in his upper and lower extremities and was helicoptered off the top of the building and was not expected to live, but to die. For a young man to see a hand grenade fall across a roof and know that he was going to die, and without hesitation and without any encouragement, falling across that hand grenade to save the life of his comrades, truly, that is an American hero. And Mr. Carpenter, if you ever hear this DVD, I want you to know we are so thankful for the heroic act that you performed. Audie Murphy lived from 1925 to 1971. He's the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II. Most of us have never heard of him. He also received awards from other countries like France and Belgium. Even their military sent awards to him for acts of valor that he transpired during the war in World War II. Listen to this. At 19 years old, he single-handed held off a whole company of German soldiers. You understand a company of soldiers is anywhere between 80 and 200 soldiers. By himself, 19 years old, in France in 1945, this young American buckled down and held off a whole company of German soldiers for over 1 hour by himself. Now watch this. When reinforcements finally showed up an hour later, even though he had been shot, even though this 19-year-old boy had been wounded, and even though his rifle did not have one bullet in it, he led the counterattack and aggressively overcome those Germans and wiped every one of them out without even a bullet in his gun because of a 19-year-old boy that believed in the United States of America. They're heroes. Those that have enlisted, signed up, drafted, men and women alike, young, scared, naive, immature, rich, poor, black and white, from the north and from the south. All of these things fade from view when somebody attacks our land. We don't join the military as a black man. We don't join the military as a white woman. We don't join the military as rich. We don't join the military as poor. I tell you, we join as an American. And brother, when we hit that battlefield, we're not concerned about the color of the skin or where you're from or how old you are or who your parents are. We've got one common denominator. We love our freedom. Now, the sick liberals of our day say you cannot love your nation and love God at the same time. Many contemporary preachers believe that as well. But it was in Luke chapter 7 when Jesus was going to heal Jairus' daughter. And the men of the city stopped Jesus and said, "This is one of the great masters of our land. Please come heal his daughter." And they wanted Jesus to know one thing about him. He said, "I want you to know he loves his nation." They felt even that would pull the favor of God because he loved his nation. I know I'm going to say some things that are untactful. They're going to be edgy. I'm telling you, they're going to be edgy, and not everybody's going to appreciate what I say. But I counted that before I'm about to say what I'm about to say. Heroes are not found on ball fields, celebrity popularity polls. I want our young people to know, heroes are not found in millionaires' mansions. They're not street thugs on the back alley, nor is it the glittering lights of fame. I tell you who heroes are. You'll find them in a canvas tent over on foreign soil. You'll find them laying in a ditch in the back of a transportation truck or in a portable hospital. That's where you find heroes. And when you find a hero, they're carrying guns, grenades, and equipment, not T-shirts, tennis shoes, and Gatorade. I tell you that right now. I want our young people to know that being rich doesn't make you a hero. Being good in sports doesn't make you a hero. What makes you a hero is when you stand up for what you believe and you're willing to put your life on the line because you'd rather die than lose your freedom. That's what a hero is. I think of the hundreds of men and women, first responders, firemen and firewomen that stormed two burning twin towers in New York City and put their lives on the line trying to salvage those that were trapped inside. Many of them were crushed. Many of them died from smoke ventilation, and many of them burned to death. Some even fell out of the windows and fell to the ground, giving their lives to save others. That, my friends, is an American hero. That's the people we love and respect in this country. I noticed when Obama was president, he took a tour and apologized for America. He may, but I never will. I tell you that right now. Now you got Biden apologizing for Trump. He might, but I never will. But I do have an apology to make. When our Vietnam vets came home and laid in those jungles and was sprayed with Agent Orange and lived out there for months on end without proper clothing and food, and they came back to their own country and they were booed and spit on and called baby killers, I say to every Vietnam veteran, welcome home, soldier. Job well done. You did what you were told to do. We thank God for you. You are a true, real American hero. Yes, you are. And the same loose-lipped, hypocritical liberal crowd that screamed and called them baby killers are the same ones that open up abortion clinics every day and slaughter babies out of the wombs of their mother. I dare you, call anybody a baby killer. Liberals and draft dodgers and socialists with their communist cohorts have never built a country. All they know how to do is ruin them. Somebody said this the other day, socialism always fails when it runs out of your money to spend. I love the free market. I love capitalism. I don't need anybody distributing my money. I'm married. I got a professional that knows how to distribute my money. I don't need anything Joe Biden's got, Nancy Pelosi, or Chuck Schumer. I don't need anything you got. I don't want you bothering me. You leave me alone. Let me enjoy my church, my family, my country, and you won't have any problem out of me. But I want to serve notice. Any political party, if you think you're going to shut this church down and threaten to put me in jail and take my First Amendment and Second Amendment right and take my right to speak and my right to defend myself, I got news for you. All hell's about to break out in the United States of America, and you're the one starting it. Heroes of freedom. I want to talk about some heroes that are very close to us. Some are even in this building today, and you don't even know you're a hero, but you are. I want to talk about the heroes of our family. One of the most vicious, bloodiest attacks that God had ever allowed David to wage in his whole life of his military career was when David came to Ziklag and found that his family had been kidnapped and abused and taken from him. It was God that gave him direction on where they were, and a declaration God gave to him was this: they have kidnapped your wife and children, destroy them. I want you to kill everyone that was involved with trying to break up your family. Never would I have believed, being 62 years old, that I would see the day when the family is drug out on the stage of a debate. There is an all-out war, as I'm preaching this morning, on the home, on parenting, and on education. So, there are some heroes in our building today because many of our people are from the state of Virginia. And thank God for you men and women that voted out that egg-sucking liberal governor. Thank you. You are an American hero that took time out of your schedule to go to the voting booth and against all odds cast your vote against socialism, dictatorship, and liberalism. Oh, yes. They attended and they challenged leaders at school board meetings. Thank God for you mama bears and papa bears that though you were tired and had to miss supper that night, you went down to the school board meeting and let these bunch of egg-sucking liberals know they were not going to have the minds and the futures of our children. Thank God for all of you. For all of you that painted signs, led in marches, made phone calls, fought legal battles, paid the price to have the right to decide what's best for your children. They're your children. God gave them to you. You know what's best for your kids, and the government needs to shut up and get out of our homes and leave us alone. Thank God once again the American people has publicly denounced this godless, neutral, gender flag-hating communist influence that's trying to steal the minds and the futures of our sons and our daughters. Our daughters and sons do not belong to the government. They do not belong to a political party. And they do not belong to Dr. Fauci, by the way. We are not stupid, uneducated, or ignorant. But I say to all you liberals, you better hear us well. We're fearless and bold. We're confident. We're determined. We're strong. We'll never bow to your mandates, your restrictions, or your stupid criticism. Call us uncaring parents. Threaten us with our jobs and send us to jail. Your feeble efforts to crush our will only drive our convictions deeper into the very heart of our soul. You fool with our kids. You have woke up a sleeping giant, and we will fight you till our dying breath. I want to say to all of you teachers, all you principals, all of you counselors, you better hear me well. I'm talking about all the schools in our surrounding district. You try bringing this nonsense into our school, and you're going to see an outpouring of rebellion like you've never seen before in the history of the state of Tennessee. We're not going to put up with it. And Governor Bill Lee, we sent you to Nashville to do a job. And you better get out of your musty study and stand with us when we stand up for our children and let this country know we love and support our children. And may I also say while I'm cleaning house, we don't need your gender awareness classes. I don't need no pug-nosed liberal trying to tell my son and daughter what sex they are. Shut up and teach them math, science, and arithmetic, and leave all that other mess alone. We don't need your gender awareness classes in Tennessee. We're not going to tolerate the culture race theory in the state of Tennessee. And your socialistic influences have come to a halt in our schools. These are not government schools, they're public schools. We paid for them, we built them. Our tax dollars pays your salary. Now get the job done or shut up. So I want to say publicly, I know I'm on TV. You think I give a flip? I ain't afraid of no television. I want Mr. Garland that's over to DOJ to hear one preacher very clear and well. Don't you ever call me a terrorist because I show up at a school board meeting and I got concerns on the trash they're trying to pump into the minds of my children. Don't you ever call me a terrorist. The Constitution gives us freedom of speech without any threats of government or laws being passed to prohibit our rights. We need some family heroes that'll step up and say enough is enough. From now on, you have boundaries, limits, and accountability. We will look you in your eye, point you out, and expose you for any action you partake of that affects the souls and the minds of our children in a negative way. I say to you, America, if you're ever going to fight, you better stand up and fight now. The last thing we need is a bunch of cowards. We need a bunch of men and women that are dedicated and will die for what's right. Now, new findings through Hillary Clinton and the election. We're now finding out that the FBI is no longer law enforcement. They're just another arm of the Democrat Party. And everybody involved ought to be in prison this time next week. Every one of them ought to be in prison. And you talking about defunding the police? No. Defund the FBI and get rid of them bunch of political pundits and shut that mess down. And vote Garland out while you're at it and put him back on the street. He shouldn't be a judge anywhere in this country trying to rape us of our children. So, yeah. I don't know if the crowd listening can take it, but I thank God I pastor a church that's got enough guts to stand up for what's right and defend the Bible and the Constitution. If you can't take it, sign off. Bless God, we want it right around here. Heroes of our freedom. Heroes of our families. Heroes of our faith. I'm done with this. Did you know I looked up in the dictionary the definition for the word hero? It means a person who's admired for courage and outstanding achievements. Who is the hero of our faith? It was Jesus that faced conflict in the garden. It was Jesus that fought until death on the cross. It was Jesus that foiled sin, death, hell, and the grave 3 days later when he got up out of the grave. And thank God while I'm preaching, he's alive forevermore. You don't even know what freedom's all about until you've knelt at the cross and been born again through the shed blood of Jesus Christ. Now, I want to say this in closing. The author and the finisher of our faith is not a pope. I say this with all due respect, but if you think eating a wafer and drinking wine with a man in a nightgown is getting you to heaven, then you don't know the gospel. You're not going to heaven because of Buddha. Some pot-bellied pig with thyroid trouble sitting there looking like he's 9 months pregnant. If that's what you're trusting to get you to heaven, you're going to go to hell when you die. If you're trusting Muhammad to get you to heaven, you're going to go to hell when you die. I want the world to know Jesus is not a way to heaven. He is the only way to heaven. He is the hero of our faith. It is what he did on the cross. Oh, bless his name for the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the death, the burial, and the resurrection of the only begotten Son of God. Let's give the Lord a hand clap of praise.